Last week was the announcement of many earnings for many of the Nairobi Securities Exchange listed companies. That's in Kenya, with some rather surprises. Now, for a comprehensive look, we are joined by Mwango Capital's Erick Mokaya. Always a pleasure speaking to you, Erick. Erick, earnings week last week for many of the financial institutions there in Kenya, ABSA, KCB. We had that big news at KCB. But before we get into that, what were your standouts?
I think last week the standouts, of course, is Cooperative Bank. It's a small bank, to be honest, like compared to the other big banks like around like Equity and all. But I think the surprise for me was that in the annual general meeting, they say that they will be raising dividends. So they're going to be giving a higher dividend payout, I think, in the next financial year. So that's good, especially for a company that usually retains around retains around 65% of earnings in the last financial year. So that's good for investors going forward. And Kingdom Bank, of course, one of the banks that they acquired, is also doing well generally. So that's also good to see. I think the big news, of course, is the big boy, KCB, reporting good earnings on the, of course, at the same time, the CEO exiting on a high. So there's a new CEO, Paul Russo. So we wait to see what he's supposed to do. But I think he has a big job in his hands. I think with Ogara at the helm, the bank has kind of done well in terms of earnings itself. So I think the share price over the last 10 years has been charged around 137% up. Then you add the dividends that is paid out, so really good performance. Then he's taken KCB from from around like 300 billion in terms of total assets, and now hitting around 1.2 billion in the Q1 2022. So overall, good performance for the banks, I would say. Lots of news across the banks, but of course, ready to explore the stories that you wish want us to double click on a bit more going forward.
So, Erick, let's start with the double click. Let's start there. That appointment of Paul Russell set to replace Joshua Oigara. First of all, caught many of us unawares. We didn't see Joshua relinquishing that CEO position anytime soon, especially going by the plans KCB had. They've just expanded in Rwanda, set for DRC expansion, looking at Tanzania as well, hopefully. The timing of it, why is Joshua leaving now?
I mean, it can only be up for speculation as much as I don't know much more than anyone else about what led to his exit. But as you say, like it's a bit it's not. I mean, it's a bit of a surprise. Caught markets a bit by surprise, especially announcing it at the end of Q1 when his actual tenure ends at the end of this year. So I think maybe they want a smoother transition process. So I went back and checked out when Oigara was appointed back in 2011, and I realized that Martin Oduor-Otieno, who was the CEO back then, also left a bit early. So that, but then at the same time, what they do is that they keep you around so that you have a very good period to transition from the former CEO to the new CEO now. So I think Oigara is not going home like suddenly. He's going to be around to do hand holding for the next like a couple of months before like the new guy in charge gets a feel of the land. But I think generally because the person who's coming in, Paul Russo, has already been in charge at the National Bank, I think, for the last 3 years, which is a subsidiary of KCB. So then I think they're all set. That's a good way to plan and a strategic exit if you're going to do one. And I think it's also not the worst of times. I know share prices of banks are not doing well across board, but I think it's a downtime to come in. So I think maybe it can only be up from here for whoever comes in terms of Paul Russo. So he just needs to keep to steer the ship, especially during an election season. And hopefully he succeeds in doing that. And then maybe next year, then he can start performing very well going forward. So good appointment, I would say. I think all what you can all do is just wait and see and give him time to settle in office and see what he can do after that.
Interesting that you call it a good appointment. Paul, to many, looks like an outsider from that KCB family. Just been at NBK. NBK has just been acquired as a subsidiary by KCB. So it's a few months of him being part of that larger family. Did we expect maybe someone appointed to be someone from within senior management, also coming at a time when Maurice also to Retich has had to leave BPR Atlas Mara Group there as KCB took over, and you have Odiambo as well taking charge of that other subsidiary?
I think word on the street is that, I mean, they would have wanted the CFO to take over, but I think, I don't know. I don't know what the board CEO, they say they had a rigorous process back in March to appoint the new CEO. So I think there's something they're seeing in the new CEO to be able to continue to steady that ship in these difficult times, I would say. But I think he's been at the helm at the NBK for the last 3 years. So he's not such a newbie, but perhaps my biggest maybe question mark would be that he's from a human resource background. So I don't know his full understanding or the dedication towards understanding at least the banking side of the business and tech side of business. So I think he needs to maybe show a bit more so that people can be able to actually believe that he's able to steer the ship very well. So I think I'm not too worried because this is also a bank with a strong history and heritage. I don't think one CEO appointment is going to significantly alter the fortunes of the company to the worse. So I think he can only do well for me, I would say. So I wish him very well as a new CEO.
And you make a very interesting point, and I'm sorry, Eric, looks like it's going to take up our whole conversation today. Russo's background is largely human resource. So does this appointment, do you think it has anything to do with managing what you would say is senior managers across the different subsidiaries that KCB Group seems to be expanding into, and maybe later they could get someone technical if need be?
I think usually what you do in such a case, when maybe the CEO is doesn't have a strong background in finance or banking, I think what you can do is maybe get a number two who's familiar with the task, who can help in terms of some of these strategic acquisitions, who can also help in terms of keeping the rest of the team keeping the team together at the end of the day. So I think he has a higher bar to climb, to show at least to the rest of the banking community that he has the mettle to actually succeed in this role. So I think I don't know, he's set to succeed. I think my thinking is that he said he can't succeed in the role. Given that we're in a pandemic, we are still in a pandemic kind of. We have the war in Ukraine. We have the elections coming up that have actually suppressed the way the banks across board are performing this year. So I think he can only do well from here, I would say. But of course, there are question marks about those, as you say, the HR background, question mark about maybe that they could have maybe taken someone else who's more knowledgeable within the finance and banking. But again, I would reiterate the fact that he has 3 years experience. He has 3 years experience watching NBK, and I think he's learned a lot in the process. And he has 7 more, or around 6 or 7 months to be guided by Ogara before Ogara actually totally exits. So I think there's a lot of learning. So if he's a fast learner and someone who's eager, and I know, like, for a fact that he also reached out on us. We reached out to him on Twitter Spaces, hoping someday that he can be able to come to engage with us on a conversation. And he said, give me a bit of time to settle in. So he's very active on social media, showing that he also wants to be part of conversations around the banking industry, which is a bit different from the previous CEO. So I think maybe that's a small point, but it's a good point to note that he's really eager to learn and eager to want to engage the community at the end of the day.